The Brewhouse was created to capture and share with you the long history of the Genesee Brewery. But the brewery itself isn't half as interesting as the beer and the people who make it. Visit GeneseeBrewhouse.com. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Again, thanks for joining us. I'm Bill Pucko. Happy to be joined by Billy Scharr. Anyone still call you Billy? Back from the day when we were watching play high school football?
Just my dad. No, I'm just kidding. Most of my friends do, yeah. It's hard to shake that, I guess.
Bill Scharr, candidate with Syracuse University, one of the best quarterbacks we've ever produced. Talk a little football. Mike Catalana, co-hosting. Pat Duffy with...
The first of the quarterbacks after Kelly. Today we got 2 weeks left. Todd Collins. Yeah. Funny story, this is the first jersey I bought at 10 years old with my own money, and I bought it really big, anticipating that Todd Collins would have the same career that Jim Kelly did, and I could still wear it as a 31-year-old man.
He still had an interesting career, didn't he?
When Todd Collins took over with the Bills, I remember it was one of the first times we could do on-air polls. We did a poll. Who should be quarterbacking, Jim Kelly or Todd Collins? And Collins won in a landslide. And then Kelly ended up coming back that year, and then he ended up getting injured, and then that was the end of his career. But yeah. But Collins lasted a long time in the NFL.
Sure. Yeah, I hardly ever saw him, but it was like a dozen years.
He was there.
So look, we're wrapping up the NFL season 2017. Bill, what are the things that kind of stand out to you as how the league has defined itself this season?
Well, I guess in the words of Coach Macpherson, the more things change, the more they stay the same. You need a quarterback. Okay, the top 5 or 6 teams all have Pro Bowl quality quarterbacks. You need a decent running game and a defense. So, right now I think that's still the theme, and the teams that are surfacing are the teams with the better quarterbacks. I think the Eagles, they're a good team without Wentz, but I think they're a great team with him. He's the difference between how deep they go in the playoffs. And my other point is I think Roger Goodell's making way too much money. That's what I learned this year.
You know what gets me is that every year there are these teams that go bottom to top, but the rosters are so big and football is so complex. It amazes me that a team can just turn it around, for instance, Jacksonville and the Rams did this year.
I would say this. When I look at NFL teams this way, I think there's turnover of the roster 2-3 years with most of your main roster. But if you have the right quarterback or the steady quarterback, you can do that 2-3 times with the same guy. The Giants have tried to do it and have done it. Certainly the Patriots have done it. The Steelers have done it, where it's Roethlisberger and this group, and then it's Roethlisberger and this group, or in the case with Eli, or certainly with Brady. You can do it that way. The other way, sometimes you can get fooled a little bit, where it sort of works. And Jacksonville may be an example of that, where Doug Marrone, I know no one wants to hear this, but he has done a good job this year with this team. Everything has sort of gone the right way for him, and they're doing it with Blake Bortles. So you wonder about long-term success there. But those other windows are pretty small for teams because of the roster turnover.
Yeah, well, to that point, I would think it's easier in the NFL than any other league to flip your roster over because, again, you just need a couple of guys at key positions. If you make a couple of signings at key positions, guys that you didn't expect to perform that were underneath some of those guys. Yeah, the Bills are an example of that, right? As long as this drought has been, there have been some couple of good Bills teams that would have made playoffs in any other division. And you have guys like Lorenzo Alexander that show up, guys like London Fletcher that end up balling out for you, guys that you never saw coming. So, yeah, it makes sense. I think what the Bills need to rely on that for next season because there are going to be a lot of holes when the cap casualties are said and done and the guys that don't fit the system are gone. You're going to need your Matt Milanos and your Deion Dawkins and your Zay Jones to step up and be legitimate NFL players. And if you don't, well, you're in the same spot you've been for the last 17 years.
But you got to get the quarterback in order to – it's so hard to have a team that gets by without the quarterback to do it another year and another year and another year. There's too much to overcome. Whereas the teams – Seattle, for the most part, though this year it's getting a little harder. Green Bay, they have overcome other things because the quarterback just does it for them. And it's hard to do that year in and year out without the QB.
Still a quarterback league.
Yeah.
Well, it is funny you say that real quick. I'm sorry. I saw a stat that LaShawn McCoy has rushed for the most yards over the last 3 years, which is great. But of course he did because nobody's running the ball anymore. That's not really a stat you should hold over your head as a football team, right?
Oh, you can run the ball. The good teams run the ball. The total numbers aren't there, but you better be able to run it. Atlanta's a much better team when they run the ball. New England finds a way to run the ball. But to your point of your main offense is still throwing the ball.
This is the Rochester Press Box presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. We'll talk about the Buffalo Bills more specifically next. Press Box, brought to you in part by Connors and Ferris, your workers' comp attorneys. Call 262-COMP, C-O-M-P, today. Welcome back to the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Time to talk a little Buffalo Bills. Connors and Ferris brings us this segment. Duffy was telling me, it's hard to just to understand it mathematically, that with 2 games left and the Bills in the 6th spot, they could win out and lose the playoff spot.
Yeah, well, here's what you have to understand about that. It's a technicality that they're in the 6th spot now. It's based on the amount of games teams have played with the common opponents and all that. I'll say this. If they win out, they're going to make the playoffs. And the odds may even get...
Why would you say that? I'm sorry.
If they win out, they're going to make the playoffs, meaning even after this week, if they were to somehow beat the Patriots, I think, depending on what happens with some of the other games, it may be a 100% lock that if they beat New England or Miami, they're in, because there's still some things that could happen. One other loss. That would
the Patriots game, 11.5 is the line, the second highest on the board this week.
Yeah, I like the Bills to cover in this game. And I think New England is obviously the better team. They're probably still the best team or right there with the best teams in the NFL. I think they're going to be a little flat this week coming off that. That was an emotional game for them, and that was a massive game for them. And they're a better team than the Bills. But the Bills have shown the ability to go up in Foxborough, take last year's shutout, no Brady and all. I think they've shown the ability to go there and play. And for a team in the position the Bills are in, I don't think there's a ton of pressure on them going in there. It would be an upset. It would be a huge win for them. I think they stay in the game the whole way. I'm not picking them to win, but I think they stay within the
Just
points.
quickly, Billy, because he brought it up about the emotional lift you get from a big win or the emotional down from a big loss. Who's more adversely affected from the Patriots game, the Patriots or the Steelers, from what happened last week?
I think probably the Steelers, because they came up on the short end of it, and it was kind of a hokey call, which I know everybody saw that play. So I think the Patriots were outplayed in that game for the majority of the game. And then Patriot love somehow came through at the end, because that was just a couple freak situations with the long pass play.
It's God's team.
And my son's a huge fan, so I pay attention. But I think the Steelers are a good football team, and on paper I think they're better than the Patriots, but it didn't play out that way.
Right, Pat. Do the Bills Patriots?
I look at it this way. Rick Dennison, the offensive coordinator, has been the best offensive coordinator at scripting plays this season. The first 15 plays he always scripts. And if you go back and watch the first drives with Tyrod against big-time opponents, they play phenomenally. In fact, they've marched down the field the majority of the opening games. There's been a couple of interceptions, turnovers by Tyrod. If you could jump on the Patriots early and do what they did the last time they played them, where you shut Brady down or at least get to him a little bit, I think you've got a shot. They're going to cover. But Rex Burkhead is not going to play. They're out of nowhere running back, which means Gillisley, former Bill, is probably going to dress. With the situation, with the emotional win for the Bills last week, knowing what this means, it wouldn't shock me if Buffalo goes in there and wins this game. But they're going to cover, no doubt.
Oh, it means so much to New England, too. Who do you like?
2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, before New England played Miami, I'd say the Bills wouldn't have a snowball's chance. But, New England showed that they're vulnerable at times. Yes, Gronk wasn't playing in that game, and they had some other people banged up on defense. But I think the Bills have a legitimate chance now. I wouldn't have thought that 2 weeks ago, prior to the Miami game. So I still think New England's going to win.
Pick another game, too. Who else do you like?
Let's see. Who else we have this weekend? I'm not sure who else
we'll
we
come
even
back
have.
to you.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Look at
I was so
board.
focused on the Bills game, man.
Mike, who you like?
I'm going to take Seattle and the points. I think Dallas will pull this game out in a field goal, but Seattle is still a prideful team, even with all their injuries, and they got hammered like you never see happen to Seattle. At home by the Rams, and I know the Rams are good, and they were rolling, but that's an embarrassed team that is still alive for the playoffs. So I think they'll come back. I think Dallas could still sneak out the win, but 4.5 points, I'll take Seattle with the
I hate
points.
making it unanimous on the Bills. I like them to cover, too. 11.5 is a lot. And on the same theory, I like Houston at home getting 10 with Pittsburgh coming in there. Who else do you like?
He's your upset lock of the week. Talking about the Chargers a second ago, they are going all the way east to New York City to play a Jets team which has absolutely nothing to lose and a coach that has them believing. You have an emotional, massive win over the Seahawks last week, and the line is 7. The Jets are going to cover that 7 points against the Chargers in the Meadowlands on Sunday. Give me a big lock I can show people. It's a lock of the week.
I love the analysis. Did you come up with something?
The Pittsburgh-Houston game does jump out at me because I think 10 points is a lot. To your point earlier about how Pittsburgh, I think they're going to win the game. I don't know if they're going to cover, though.
Connors and Ferris, the sponsor of this segment of the Rochester Press Box. we'll award the winner of our Pick the NFL contest a check of $500 to be donated to the Hunters Hope Foundation. This portion of the Rochester Press Box is brought to you by Connors and Ferris. Like It or Not is next. Welcome back. This is the Rochester Press Box presented by the Genesee Brew House. Like it or not, it's hard to say that you don't like him. The late, great Dick Macpherson, who was your college coach at Syracuse, and the local media at the time blamed him for ruining your career because he took a great drop-back passer and tried to make you into an option player.
That's so weird, because I thought I was an option quarterback. I don't know what was going on there. I thought my 4.99 40 established that.
What's your takeaway from Coach?
You know what? He was a great guy. He really was. I think, my confrontations with him were more from an X's and O's standpoint. At the time I was a big local recruit. It made sense for me to go there. I'm the youngest of 9 kids, close to home, that kind of deal. But he was tough to play for as a quarterback because the expectations were high. Offensively, we were running things that weren't necessarily in my wheelhouse, but yet I felt challenged that I could do it, and I wanted to prove that I could do it, even though, I ran more times in preseason camp than I did my whole high school career. But, I in a weird way, I enjoyed playing with him. Coach Fears, who's actually with the Patriots still now as a running backs coach, recruited me. Great guy. I spent more time with him, and Bill Maxwell, who eventually went on to be the Hobart coach, was as the quarterback coach. So I spent more time with those guys. So, but from a game strategy and, X's and O's perspective, we had different opinions on certain things. And, once I won the quarterback spot, it became a little bit more pronounced. But all in all, he was a good guy. He was a good guy to have beers with. He was a good guy, for the game of football. So I think from a community standpoint.
Players then, huh?
Yes, exactly. I was 30 when it happened, but we didn't do that in the locker room. But it was a fun, and again, the experience for me was enjoyable. Had I wished it played out a little bit differently, yeah. But you know what? If ifs and buts were candy and nuts, it'd be Christmas every day.
Look at that.
Right?
Like it or not, Cleveland Cavaliers won 18 out of 19, and Isaiah Thomas is coming back.
It's funny. Everyone's saying, look, they've won 18 out of 19, and they're getting Isaiah Thomas back. The problem that the Cavs have had all season isn't scoring. The problem has been defense. So I would actually worry that Isaiah Thomas is coming back. 1, you don't know what he's going to be like after this injury. 2, there's only one basketball, and if you need points, you're not going to Isaiah Thomas. You're going to LeBron James. And 3, how much more can you get offensively from this Cleveland Cavaliers team? I'm going to make a prediction. Eventually, they'll figure it out when the playoffs go. But they're going to take a hit record-wise for the first month that Isaiah Thomas is in that lineup because he's never played anything like this before. In Boston, it was very structured. Brad Stevens has been very good with the structure and making things work. It's not that way in Cleveland. It's get LeBron the ball and we'll figure things out.
Well, Brad Stevens is structured, but he's smart too. Brad Stevens knew, give Isaiah the ball, let him make plays. He's doing the same thing now with Kyrie. So that's really the structure in Boston. They move the ball, but at times turn it over to him and let him make plays. I think the difference is in Cleveland, when you get now you get Thomas on that team. They can be a pick and roll team that they're not really doing now. They're going in the post. They're doing it a lot. And LeBron is good enough to turn the offense over to another guy. He used to do it with Kyrie. He can do that with Isaiah. But to Pat's point, it will be an adjustment for them. But he's another weapon for them, and they can use him and run the offense through him for periods of time that I think he'll help them a lot.
It works so well with Kyrie that Kyrie demanded a trade to bring Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah, but
to
you're
Cleveland.
talking more about the ego of Kyrie wanting to be the guy. Then in this case, this is now Thomas has a chance to do this with LeBron and beat the Celtics and go to the finals. So I think it's a little bit different.
But there is something you're overlooking here, and there's an adjustment for professional athletes, at least what I've seen hanging around them, right? He was the guy in Boston. There was no one even close to the guy. Now, he's not. He's like the fourth most popular. He's behind J.R. Smith.
No, he's not. He'll be the
I
second.
love J.R. Smith.
He'll be the second. And it's obviously you're behind. LeBron James is the best player in the game, so there's no doubt.
Kyrie looks pretty good in Boston.
This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Unfinished Business is next.
No matter how you holiday, where you holiday, or who you holiday with, stay bright with Dunkin's holiday coffee flavors like brown sugar cinnamon and peppermint mocha. Grab your favorite and make your holidays happen. The holidays run on Dunkin'.
Welcome back to the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Time for Unfinished Business. Brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts. America runs on Dunkin'. Pat.
A little holiday tip from me, the resident Jersey expert here on the Press Box. Christmas is this weekend, and maybe you went out and you got your kid a Buffalo Bills jersey. You're going to go out today and, last minute, buy someone a Bills jersey for Christmas. Please, God, don't do that. Because every jersey that they're selling right now in the store has no guarantee of being on this team next year. Richie Incognito, Kyle Williams, Tyrod Taylor, LaShawn McCoy, all could be cap casualties. I mean, Tyrod is almost certainly one of them. There is nothing worse than opening up a jersey on Christmas morning and then 3 weeks later finding out that person won't be coming back. It happened to me when I was 17, 18, maybe I was even in my 20s. Craig Rivet, Captain Saber Slug jersey, and literally 3 weeks after I got it, he was gone. I've never worn that jersey. Maybe I'll wear it when this thing is over. My point is this. Take your time or go personalize. Don't get a jersey for that Bills fan in your life for this Christmas.
But don't they increase in value, once you get that?
There's an irony rule.
It's old school automatically.
There is an irony rule that I will get to at another time because it is far too complicated to explain.
Jersey collector. Billy, what do you got?
It's tough to follow that up. It really is. But I heard a conversation the other day about Tom Brady's skill set dwindling. And albeit that may be the case to some degree, he's 40 years old, but at the same time, he's still one of the top 4 quarterbacks in the league. So as long as he continues to keep winning and keep producing to a point where they're going to be making the playoffs, I think it's 2 or 3 years before Tom Brady fades off into the sunset, unfortunately for the Bills.
Still a 40-year-old. Do you think in the back of their minds that the Patriots management don't have some reservation about having let Garoppolo go?
I think it came down to finances, and I think Jimmy G starting out in San Fran, so it's probably the right thing to do for him. But it's a good place to be a backup because he doesn't get hurt that often. But at some point, you're going to have to hit the wall. 40,
in 2
42.
years, he's going to be a better quarterback than Brady.
Maybe. We have no idea. Garoppolo's played a few games. Everybody gets
physically,
excited.
I would agree with that physically, but not cerebrally.
Yeah, if this mystery doctor Brady has keeps putting whatever he's got in his probably.
That's right.
Are you making an accusation?
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Mike.
All right, so everybody saw the play, right? It was a Steelers touchdown, then it wasn't a touchdown. And the main answer from most people has been, well, that is the rule. It's a bad rule. and that they need to change it. And I agree with that. It's a terrible rule. The idea of surviving the ground with the football, when did we decide that we needed to change that part of football? Every other rule in the game of football seems to benefit the offense over the defense. So the one thing we're going to give to the defense is this thing that annoys everybody. It annoys fans. It annoys, I think, the officials. It annoys the announcers. It annoys everyone. It's a catch. We all know that it's a catch. We know what the rule is. The guy's intention, James' intention for the Steelers, was to reach for the goal line. It should have been a touchdown. I don't know why the NFL has done it. I don't know why they don't simplify things. We should be able to know a catch is a catch. That should be a catch. It's a rule that needs to be changed.
And they doubled down on it because the first time this all came up and was controversial, Des Bryant catches whatever. They
Yeah, it was
said
Des Bryant.
They went reconsidered.
The only
decided
one
to
who
keep
got
it.
away with it was Brandon Cooks of the Patriots.
Yeah, is that weird?
How did that happen?
God's team.
God's team.
Get
Yeah.
out of my face, Bill.
Thanks, guys. This portion of the Rochester Press Box brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts. America runs on Dunkin'. Good to see you again, Bill.
Good to be here. Good to be
Fellas.
seen.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. And thanks for joining us at the Rochester Press Box.